Good morning, monsters, and welcome to today's episode of Monsters on the Edge. A lot of my guests have lives outside of this, and it comes that certain episodes have to be pre-recorded because they just can't make it live. Today is one of those such episodes, so today's episode will be live to you, but pre-recorded for myself and my guest. So guys, coming up, we have a really cool event here. SquatchCon is coming up, and it is a live event in person as well as a virtual event. So no matter where you are, if you can't get out to it, you can still check it out. Here's a little bit more.
Are you ready to uncover the mysteries of Bigfoot? Join us for SquatchCon Idaho 2023. This year, we're bringing the magic directly to your screen, or join us in person. Witness the world premiere of the enhanced Paul Freeman Bigfoot footage. Doug Hychek discovered a secret within this enhanced video you'll have to see to believe. Hear from an all-star panel of Bigfoot experts like Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, Cliff Barackman, Brian King-Sharp, and Michael Freeman. But that's not all. Get exclusive online bonuses such as Bigfoot-themed wallpapers, a Bigfoot coloring book, an interactive Bigfoot quiz, Squatch Nut Field Guide, get a copy of the Freeman Bigfoot Files ebook, and more. Whether you attend in person or watch it live online, you'll be part of an unforgettable experience. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Secure your spot today. SquatchCon Idaho 2023. Step into the unknown.
Very cool. Look at that. It's not all the cons that you can actually attend via virtual, so this is a really cool thing that they're doing, and it's awesome that you guys get a chance to check that out. Speaking of things that you can check out, guys, On the Trail of Undiscovered Beasts Season 1 is streaming now on Paraflix. You can use promo code CAPS10 and get 10% off your first 3 months of subscription. Paraflix is a online streaming platform very similar to Netflix, except it's all paranormal and cryptids and fun stuff like that, because if you're watching our show, you're definitely going to want to check that out. And another thing, if you want to support everything that myself and my team, Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society do, head on over to our website and click Shop Our Store. There you can find our logo on just about everything that you can imagine, and you can show it and wear it and spread the word about it. And while you're online, head on over to all of our social media platforms. You can find us at Wisconsin Caps on Patreon, Facebook, Twitter. I don't think it's Twitter anymore. I think it's X. I don't know. Things move very fast nowadays. TikTok and YouTube. And you can also find us on Instagram at WI Caps. We are going to be at MI Paracon in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, coming up here at the end of August. We are going to be at the Great Lakes Paranormal Convention in Glen Beulah, Wisconsin, September 22nd through the 24th. I will be doing a presentation at the Kenosha Public Library October 6th. And we will be down Saturday, actually, in the Milwaukee Paranormal Conference in Milwaukee. And then in November, we head down to Lexington, Kentucky for CryptidCon. If you want all the information on all these events, head on over to wisconsincaps.com and click on the public events tab. All right, guys, if you want to show your support for everything here on the Untold Radio Network, check this out.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned, plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys, that's enough clicking buttons. Too many things over there. All right. My show, as I said today, my guest couldn't make it on live for our show. We are live as you're watching it, but today's episode is pre-recorded. So, without any further ado, I'd like to bring up my guest today, Michael Mays. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So, with every pre-recorded episode, I want right away if you could tell us where people can get a hold of you if they have any questions throughout the show, and how they can find out more about you. Tell everybody that right away.
Sure. Well, I'll just give you an email address. It's just Michael Mays 44 at yahoo.com. Mays is spelled, as you can see on the screen, Mayes. That's the most common error when it bounces back to someone. A lot of people leave the E out. So it's just Michael Mays 44 at yahoo.com. You can reach me through my Texas Cryptid Hunter blog site. Their email address is listed there, as well as on my author's webpage, which is michaelcmays.com. So any and all of that, and I'm pretty good about responding within a day or so to emails. So
awesome. Very good. Very good. I just like to make sure that, anybody that has questions, because obviously it's not live today. So we want to make sure that, they can still get a hold of you and ask their questions and stuff if they have anything throughout the show. So thank you very much for that.
Sure.
So let's get into this. So you got a huge bio. I posted it in the show notes so that everyone can read it and stuff. And I usually read them before I bring on the guest, but I mean, that's half our show right there. So why don't you give everybody the Cliff Notes, tell them who you are and how you got into all this and what your interests are.
Well, again, my name's Michael Mays. I grew up in East Texas, which is the forested region of the state. A lot of folks are under the impression that Texas is the big dusty desert that you see in all the John Wayne movies back in the day. And certainly there are parts of Texas that do look like that. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there is a heavily wooded eastern part of the state. And that's where I grew up. Like a lot of people my age, how I got into this, it was kind of, a golden age of Bigfoot in a way. As I grew up as a kid in the late 70s and 80s, everything from the $6 Million Man fighting Bigfoot on TV to the shows like Leonard Nimoy's In Search of, The Legend of Boggy Creek came out, and the Patterson Gimlin footage was often shown in theaters as kind of a little short before the actual main feature film would come on. And it was, the first time I saw it, it was less than 10 years old. And I saw it in a theater, and that kind of set the hook for me, I think, as far as interest in this kind of thing. And so I guess, I just never grew out of it like a lot of people do. I got away from it a little bit as a young adult, got busy trying to make a living, starting a family and so on. But the interest never really went away. And it was not until I was in my mid-30s probably that I realized that a lot of the myths and legends from the Big Thicket country in southeast Texas, as far as wild men and things of that nature, might actually be connected to the whole Sasquatch phenomenon of the Pacific Northwest and other places. And that's when things kind of went to another level at that point.
Very cool. So where did you start with this? I mean, did you obviously were watching the shows and stuff like that. Did you, at what point did you start like going out in the field and actually looking for these things?
Well, as you said, I watched the shows, and as you're well aware, some are better than others and things like that. And what actually got me off the couch and doing some field work was I went to go see, I was a member of an outdoors group. It was called Legacy Outfitters. It's a Christian outdoors group. And every month we'd have a meeting and a meal, and they'd bring in a speaker. And part of my job at that time was to help the director of the regional chapter there come up with topics and things. So we did all kinds of things from, guys would come in and demonstrate, how to train your retriever, and or just wood bushcrafts and things like that all the time. So and he came to me one day and said, there's this guy that I heard speak at a bigger Waco meeting that we talk about Bigfoot. Do you think our guys would like that? And at that point, I didn't really care if our guys would like it or not. I knew I would like it. So, oh, absolutely, we got to get this guy in here. And so a gentleman named Daryl Collier came in and spoke to our group. And at that point, I talked to him for quite a while after the meeting. We knew a lot of common places and stories and things like that from East Texas, and we became fast friends. And it wasn't long after that a friend of mine that was at the meeting with me, we decided, we can do this. We can go start looking around. And so we got on the at that time it was the Texas Bigfoot Research Conservancy website, and in combination with the BFRO website, the Texas area. And we just started looking for areas in East Texas where the most reports came from. And we settled on an area in the same Houston National Forest of Southeast Texas, and we started making trips out there. And we had not really been doing it very long. It wasn't our first trip out by any means, but we had been doing it less than a year when we made one trip in May of 2005, and that's where we had our visual. And at that point, I was all in at that point. I was like, okay, I kind of thought, I just want to go out there and prove this to myself. Is it real or is it not? And I was about 51% thinking there was something to it. And then I was thinking, if I saw a barefoot 15, 16-inch footprint out in the middle of nowhere, that would be enough for me. No one does that in Texas. No one runs around barefoot, much less someone that size. So when we actually had a visual of the animal, I realized that, okay, I know, but it's not enough. I want to know more, and I would like to somehow prove that this is real and maybe remove some of the stigma behind the topic that keeps people from coming forward and which hinders legitimate research efforts and things like that. So at that point, I joined the TBRC, and Daryl and I have become fast friends, and the TBRC has morphed into the NAWAC now, the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. I served on the board of directors for about, I think it was about 15 years, including several years as the chairman of the organization. I'm currently not on the board. I'm still a member. I gave that up, just life, demands and things. But still a member of the organization and working with them right now.
Very cool. So I don't know how many people are familiar. I mean, obviously people that are in the Bigfoot world are familiar with the NABC, that thing, North American Wood Ape Conservancy. So there's been a lot of really cool things that have come out from that, and I think the one thing is the Tag 7 program or project.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I feel like that's kind of been not like old news, but I think most people have heard about it. But I think it's important to kind of put some info on it.
Yeah, in the early days, we took reports from all over, and we still do. But what we were trying to do with those reports, obviously, we'd go out and try to vet them and investigate in person the more compelling ones, hoping that we might run into one of these things. But what we were really, a secondary goal, I guess I should say, was we were hoping to plot these visuals, these sightings, encounters, and try to figure out where are these animals? Where is there a thicker, collection of them in this area than the others? And trying to find them. Where are they? And where are people seeing them on at least a semi-regular basis? And then the plan was to zero in our efforts on those spots. So as it turned out, that spot, we had We had 3 main areas of interest. One was on the Trinity River in East Texas. One was in the Big Thicket National Preserve of Southeast Texas, and then the third was up in East Central Oklahoma, in the Ouachita Mountains. And we dubbed these 3 areas X, Y, and Z. And as time went on, we kind of decided that the area on the Trinity River, I hate to disparage anyone, but I think that was a hoax. I think that was, or at best, a misinterpretation of what was going on. And so we abandoned that site. And the Big Thicket National Preserve, I am convinced there was and there are these animals in there. However, we were having to work with the National Parks Service, and we had a superintendent of the Big Thicket that was, I wouldn't go so far as to say he was sympathetic to our efforts, but he allowed us to go in with a camera trapping project and do some work in there. And then he left and was replaced, and the new guy basically booted us out, wanted nothing to do with us, and we haven't been able to get in there in any kind of official capacity since. So that area was kind of a bust at that point, which was a shame. But as it turned out, Area X, the area in Oklahoma in the Ouachita Mountains, turned out to be the best location anyway. And that's where we've concentrated our efforts really for the past decade, really. We still go out to other places, but that's numero uno, so to speak. And we had been going in there for, 5-6 years on a regular basis with big summer operations. We would have teams of anywhere from 3 to 5 people go in for a week at a time. And the idea was to establish a presence in an area where we believed these animals were living and keep a continuous presence for as long as we possibly could. So in the early days, that might have been, 6 weeks. And this year's summer operation went about 15 weeks total from start to finish with, somebody. It wasn't the same guys that stayed in there that long. We'd rotate out. But the idea being the longer we're there, the more likely they are to make a mistake, to show themselves, to be frustrated at our presence. Because, most people, when something throws a rock at you or screams its head off, and okay, we're packing up and we're going, right? And that's the typical human response. And so the idea behind the extended stay was, okay, when that doesn't work, do they have to up the ante a little bit and maybe show themselves to, beat on their chest or, whatever, intimidate us visually kind of. And that's what we were hoping for. And certainly behaviors did escalate to some point, but that full, walk out in the open kind of thing hasn't really happened. So it was in the midst of these summer operations when one of our members came up with an idea of these small radio transmitters. And if you're a kid like me, at a certain time period, you may remember a show called Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and Marlon Perkins and various others would go out, and you'd see them. They'd put collars on mountain lions, and they would track them. They'd hold these antennas up, and they're scanning, and beep beep beep, and they would track them down that way. And it's essentially the more technologically advanced version of that. So we acquired some little radio tags, nano tags. They were very small. They were originally meant for reptiles, like turtle size animals. And we came up with a way to kind of disguise them. We took, if you know what we took these little sticker burrs, these little round, spiky sea urchin almost looking things that grow down here in the South, and everybody hates them. They're, you get these things, these cockleburs, and if they get in a horse's tail or mane or on your dog, if you have a long hair, it's just awful to get out. They just stick to everything, and it's just almost impossible to get them out. And so we cut one in half, hollowed it out, and we were able to insert one of these nano tags in it so that it looked like something natural. And we strung them up with black industrial thread across areas that we felt like were travel routes. And we strung them up at about 7 feet high, and it was rigged up in such a way that when something walked through it, one end of the string would unravel and this thing would attach and adhere to the animal. And we had done a lot of testing on birds, deer hide, short-haired pelts of various kinds, and we felt like it would not adhere to it didn't adhere to feathers at all. It was just not a good deal. And short-haired animal, like say a deer, for example, it just wasn't going to stick for any length of time. And so we felt pretty good about it. So we put these traps out, and it was, tag 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through, if I remember, about a dozen. And it was tag 7 that was activated. Something walked through and took the tag. And to make a long story a little shorter, we lost contact with the tag, and there were many of us who thought that maybe the thing's just malfunctioned and it's just not working. But what we learned about these tags and these antennas and receivers, it's a direct line of sight kind of thing. So if something goes over a ridge or drops down into a canyon and you're not on that level playing field, so to speak, you're not going to get the signal. And so it was recommended that we get an antenna and receiver up on an airplane and fly the area. And sure enough, we were able to acquire the signal a couple of valleys over from where the tag was actually picked up. And at that point, we had a ground team, and the pilots would alert us to where it was, and they were marking GPS coordinates and hits. And we tracked this thing for months, and we tracked it during the winter months when bears, which critics or skeptics maybe is a better way to put it, of what we tagged, mostly say it was probably a bear that we tagged. But we tracked this thing all over the place, miles and miles, during the winter months when the black bears in Oklahoma are hibernating, when they're in torpor. And the home range turned out to be, or the range, we use different methods to calculate. You can read all this on the website. The range was much larger than what would be expected of a black bear in Oklahoma. And so the timing of it, when it was moving, and it was moving long distances very quickly, it just doesn't scream bear. And if you take bear out of the equation, what is that? And of course, again, it was strung up 7 feet high, which I feel like even if a bear messed with that tag, it would be pawing at it at 7 feet high, and it would have to be a heck of a black bear even at that to do that. And certainly anything that stuck to a paw or forearm of a bear, it would gnaw off and get out, and that just didn't happen. And it became really clear we were not going to be able to run this thing down on foot. We got within 100, 150 yards one time, or several times, and every time we'd close in on it, it would just retreat quickly into the thickest, gnarliest, nasty stuff. And it's very vertical country out there, and it was able to traverse these mountains in minutes, and we just couldn't keep up with it. So we got to the point where we were hoping it would actually shed the tag, because we knew it would have hair, it would have DNA, all over it, and we would know for sure what it was. But we tracked this thing for about a year. That's how long the batteries last. And unfortunately, the battery died before we could ever track down the animal or the shed tag, if it did manage to get rid of it. And but anyway, that data is fascinating, and it's something that, if you're open-minded and you take into consideration the context of when and how it was acquired and where, if someone's open-minded, they have to, I don't know what that is. And it certainly, we go to great lengths to eliminate and say, well, we don't think it was any known indigenous species from that region. And so, yeah, that paper, the Tag 7 paper, is available on the NAWA website. That's woodape.org. And it's there where anybody can read it. And It was a fascinating experiment, and we've tried to duplicate it. That's the secret to science, is duplication. And we haven't been able to do it, and so we've kind of come to realize just how lucky, how fortunate we were that first time, and we have high hopes maybe of being able to do it again. But so far, it just hasn't happened yet, which I think also points to the fact that it's probably not a more common indigenous animal, because the place is crawling with black bears. If somehow the black bears were getting to it, I think it would have happened again. So that in a nutshell is tag 7, and I believe with all my heart that we tagged one of these animals and were able to track it for over a year. And hopefully one of these days, when the species is proven to be real, that data will be very valuable to the biologists who go in and try to study it.
Very cool. Very cool. I definitely encourage everyone to go check out that paper and that report, because there's a lot of information there. Do you, and maybe you don't, do you have offhand how big of a range you were able to tell this thing had?
Yeah, it ranged. Get me lying to you here. There are 3 kind of accepted formulas or methods for deducing home range, and it ranged anywhere from about 20 square miles up to about 75 square miles, the estimate. And we had the number of points we had, data points we had, the GPS coordinates that we had. It is admittedly on the low end of what would be an accepted number, a minimum number to try to extrapolate any real data from, but it is within the number. It's on the low end, but it is an acceptable number. And so bottom line is, with all 3 of those methods, it was much bigger than a black bear's range, and the only animal whose range overlapped about the same size was a mountain lion, which, according to the state of Oklahoma, they're not in the Ouachita Mountains anyway. And now happen to know better than that, but at the same time, as we said, we did a lot of testing on the front end, and these things did not adhere to a shorter coat like a mountain lion would have. So pretty big range, very fast, over mountains, one valley to the next, moving all over the place during winter months. So, just it did not seem to point to a native species to that area.
So from where it was initially, we'll say, attached, and your data points and stuff, did it ever end up coming back to that?
No, not during the time that we were able to track it. It did not, or it did not. It was not present at a time when we were actively scanning for it. You can't know absolutely for sure, but again, with that line of sight, that's the limitation to the technology. If it steps behind a big tree, you don't pick up the signal. It is a direct line you have to have, and the vegetation during the warmer months, when everything is leafed out, is very thick up there and really limits. Matter of fact, we did some experiments on just how far can we, during the height of summer when everything is really thick, how far can we how far can a tag be away from the receiver and still acquire the signal? And we were kind of disheartened to learn that it was only about 150 yards max. Even even if you're on a game trail, and it winds around, there's still vegetation between you and the receiver and the tag, and that's just really not very far at all. So I don't doubt it was back in the general vicinity at some time, but we never picked it up again at the spot where it acquired the tag.
Interesting. Now, when you're looking at the data points, do you see like a more linear movement, like it was trying to go from point A to point B, or was it kind of just like roaming around in the area of those like 20 square miles?
It had gone from the valley floor where it was acquired. It did go to higher elevations during the time that we tracked it, but it didn't stay up high, the whole time. It was up and down and around, and it was, kind of what you would expect of an animal that forages for its meal. Certainly did not correlate to, a bear who wakes up, and they do, I think it's a myth that they just sleep straight through during hibernation and they never get up. And they'll come out and they'll wander about a bit, but they never get very far from the den site before they return and lay back down. And it far exceeded what you would expect for anything like that. So there was not a pattern of movement, like it kept coming back to a certain spot or anything like that we were able to discern, but it was kind of within this general kind of a blob. It wasn't a real circle or anything, but this area, it didn't leave that we know of while we were tracking again. And who knows, it may be gotten 200 miles away, and that's when we lost the signal, and we're unable to reacquire it. So it's impossible to know for sure, but there was no real discernible pattern. But again, it was a pretty short amount of time, really. You really want to tag on something over at least 1 full year where you're tracking it full time. Then, like a big cat that will come back on its territory, maybe once a year, it'll come through a certain area it'll be there a couple of days before it moves on. It'll be a year before people see or hear it again, so we just don't have enough data points to be able to say that for sure. But what we can tell you, it moved fast. It moved far very quickly, and it just did not behave like a bear or any other animals in the area that we know of.
What time of year about was it actually tagged, and then when did you lose it?
It was tagged in August. It was the very tail end of one of the summer operations, and we did not reacquire that. We didn't reacquire the signal until, if I'm remembering correctly, December of that year. We had guys in and around camp that hiked, miles in every direction trying to reacquire the signal, and again, with the limitations of the direct line of sight kind of a technology that we're working with, then we widened out. We took the antennas, receivers, we got in trucks, and we drove to mountaintop, scanning and looking, and never managed to reacquire it that way. It was not until we got in the plane that they were able to hit it again, because basically everything is a direct line from the plane. So it was fascinating, it was frustrating, it was interesting, it was all these things, all kind of rolled into one. And you just wish, again, why has nobody found these things? It's because nobody's looking full time. You've got weekend warriors, you've got people that do genuinely make an effort, but almost everyone's got day jobs, they have to go back to. And so you might have a long weekend to get up to Oklahoma and try to track this thing. And you might, maybe 4 days before you got to leave, and it might be a month before you can come back or more. And I think these are the hindrances. These are the things that are keeping us from expanding our knowledge about these creatures. And discovery is not really the right term, because people are seeing them. People do know they're out there. But gathering that proof that scientific community demands before it's recognized as a species, I think that's the main thing that's hanging this whole thing up, is nobody's looking on a full-time basis. And I think that's what it's going to take.
Now, you said you have tried the project again. Have you tried any newer technology? I know you haven't got anything on another creature, but have you upgraded to more of like a Wi-Fi or cell service kind of trackers?
Well, the cell service thing, we're out there really isn't any. So we're limited with that. And the Wi-Fi thing we haven't really delved into yet. And that gets you, though, into another issue. Why has nobody proved these things to be real? And it comes to money, funding. There are some real intriguing technologies out there that we would love to give a shot. However, they cost thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And, we're school teachers and business people, small business owners and policemen and whatever, we're just regular folks and with families. And, we're spending hundreds of dollars just to get to and stay in the study area, much less acquire a lot of technology to take with us up there. Now we are a dues paying organization, and those dues go 100% toward whatever it is we decide to spend that money on that year. So during this time we spent that money we got from dues on tags and receivers and antennas and things of that nature. Other years we've spent money to upgrade on optics like night vision or thermal monoculars, and that have the capability to record video and things like that. And unfortunately, what we typically have to do is we've got to pick a thing this year to spend our money on. We just don't have the resources to spend. Let's get this thermal, let's pair it with this high-end camera, let's attach that camera to this military grade drone. And you run into some real money real fast that way. So that's another limitation of having private citizen scientists trying to go out and do this work is funding is a real limitation.
Definitely. Now, I believe you guys had a new project with trail cams going recently. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. We dubbed it Hadrian's Wall. The idea was to we are leasing some property in the valley where all this stuff has gone on in what we call Area X in the Ouachitas. And there's a point where the valley, kind of picture an hourglass in your head, where it kind of bottlenecks a little bit. And it's only about a quarter of a mile, maybe a little more than that, from the base of one mountain to a creek, and just on the other side of that creek there's the base of another mountain. And so it's a fairly narrow spot, and we have encountered these animals in this area multiple times. And so the idea being, let's string a picket line of cameras from the base of one mountain across the valley floor to the base of another mountain, and we'll kind of have a camera watching camera kind of array thing going on. And if something comes from this direction toward camp, to keep an eye on us, it should theoretically walk right through the field of one of these cameras. So we tried that, and we didn't have much success. We got a lot of really cool wildlife pictures, but we didn't get what we were after. And we did all kinds of experiments, wondering if is the infrared, can these things see in the infrared spectrum? And so we actually disabled the nighttime capability of the cameras. So let's try it just daytime only. At night, now there's nothing to give away the location if they can see in the infrared, which of course we don't know. And of course we got all kinds of real interesting audio, because the cameras would still trigger, but it's just black. You just can't see anything. And you would hear something walking around, sniffing, touching the cameras, things like that at night. But because it was, that infrared had been disabled, there was no video or photos. And that didn't happen in the daytime. The occasional bear would get a hold of a camera, but it was surprisingly rare that happened. And things, hearing the animal milling around, touching the camera, tapping, super heavy breathing, things like that, it happened at night, and it only happened after that infrared was disabled. And make of that what you will. It's not proof of anything. I can't tell you what that was doing all that, but it only happened once that infrared was disabled. And so we haven't gotten the evidence we wanted with that. We're going to kind of rearrange the array, try to do some different things, but it's also a myth that these cameras are infallible. The ranges are not what they're advertised to be. Maybe in a lab you can get, each camera has, 180 feet of cone of vision or whatever, but out in the field that just doesn't seem to be the case. And they also just sometimes flat out do not trigger. I'll give you a great example. This was several years ago. We had the highest, I don't want to get sued, so I won't say the brand of the camera, but it was the highest, most well thought of, most expensive commercially available trail cameras that was out there at the time. And we had 3 of them triangulated on this area where we felt like something had been coming through. And we were sequestered in an area watching that little triangular area, and a black bear came wandering out of the woods, and it stopped. I mean, if we had drawn an X in the middle of that triangle, stand here, animal, so we can get your picture, that's where it stopped. And it just sniffed the ground and sniffing the air. It stood up and on 2 legs for a few minutes, looking around, sniffing the air. It was there for fully 2.5 minutes in the exact same spot, sniffing, moving, dropped back down, and just meandered away into the woods. And we thought, well, if nothing else, we're going to have some really cool bear photos, to show. And later we pulled the cards, and not a single one of those cameras had fired even once. Not one of them. It wasn't like one of them didn't snap and the other 2 did, or not one of them went off. And we know they're working because I got lots of pictures of us as we approached them to take the cards out. That's one thing. If you get into trail cams, you're going to have lots of pictures of yourself as you approach to do maintenance on them. And so we know they were working, so to speak, but not one of them fired when that bear was in the middle. We didn't have them set super high. One was on a fence post, about 4 feet high. I mean, it was. They should have captured that animal, and they just didn't. So you wonder what else have these cameras missed? And they get better as time goes on, but the trigger speed remains an incident. Anyone who does this on a regular basis, you find yourself getting lots of pictures of, pardon my French here, but the ass end of deer and bobcats or whatever it is that you capture, because they've walked through that area where the camera is supposed to trigger, and by the time it actually takes the camera actually activates, it's almost out of the frame. And that happens just over and over and over again. And so if anything's, I don't think it even has to be running particularly fast. I think if it's just strolling through kind of with purpose, you get lots of pictures of the forest with nothing there, and you're like, well, what triggered it? And sometimes it's wind, sometimes it's a branch bobbing around, and sometimes whatever it was, it's just walked out of the cone of detection and before the camera triggers. So these are, that's reality, and people get frustrated. Oh, that's an excuse. And there are excuses and there are reasons. And those are reasons. That's reality. Now we try to overcome that, but we just haven't been able to quite do it yet.
Absolutely. We had a private property that we were working on with trail cameras, and we had apples set out as a bait, and the apples would be gone every time, and we couldn't figure out why they weren't getting pictures of these things. And we found out that the apples were about, we'll say, like 30 feet away from the camera, and the camera only triggered out to about 20 feet.
Yeah. I bet you that camera's box didn't say 20 feet on its range, right? I bet it said 60. And, it's you work with what you got, and you do the best you can do. And, I understand frustration. Why aren't we getting this evidence? But I don't listen to much criticism from somebody who isn't going out and actively trying to do it. I mean, it's easy to be Monday morning quarterback and stand at a distance and say, well, here's what you guys should do, and well, come on, show us, and they don't seem to want to. So it's kind of the Theodore Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena, that the blood, sweat, and the tears, and don't listen to the critics on the outside who don't get into the arena, because that's easy. Trying to do it is hard, and you sacrifice a lot, time with your family, finances. If you get into this, you're going to spend a lot of money, I promise you, just in travel, if nothing else. And it's a hard thing to do, and they don't live places where it's easy to get to them, and they don't particularly want to be around you. So it's, they're evading on purpose, and it's a frustrating game.
I wonder, all of your trail cameras that you had set up in this wall, are they all motion sensor?
Well, they were motion sensor, and then of course at night they were IR. And the motion sensor, still, like I said, they'll still fire at night, but there's nothing to illuminate them at night once we disabled that. So yeah, and we've tried different brands, and we've tried, you name it. If it's commercially available, we've tried it. And but again, it's a matter of if you're working. Well, we'll go back down to the Big Thicket for a second. We had some cameras in there for a while, and you take a camera, let's say you've got 50 cameras, which is a lot of money. The good ones are well over $100 a pop, so you've got 50 of them. You've spent a lot of money, but you're in a 25,000 acre unit. You are watching essentially 0% mathematically of that unit. When you calibrate or calculate the the cone that these cameras can watch, the square footage times 50, you're less than 1% of the forest is actually being watched. You would need hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of these things to truly monitor the forest and feel like nothing is going to get by. And that of course is completely impractical. It's just somebody's going to have to get lucky with the game cameras. And people, game cameras are everywhere. Everybody's got them. And I counter that with most game cameras are watching deer feeders. That's where most of them are. Or they're used around the perimeter of a home property as security kind of devices. Very few people walk 20 miles out into the woods, hang a camera up in the middle of nowhere, and come back every 4 weeks to put new batteries. That's just not happening. And so why with all these game cameras out, or is no one getting these pictures? It's because they're not putting them where these things live. These things live in difficult to reach areas. They're the most remote places on the continent. Where do they live? Find that map of the North America taken at night, the satellite picture taken at night. Find the black spots where there are no lights. That's where they live. And there are spots all over and they correlate very nicely to where sightings distribution maps show that these things are being seen. That's where they are. They're not, in a pasture watching a deer feeder 150 yards from the farmhouse. Now, could it happen? Sure. Could that, one walk by there? I suppose that could happen. It's just not likely. So that's why the game cameras aren't picking these things up, because they're just not really out where these things live. And even if the few of us who go to that trouble to do it, is such a minute little piece of the forest that you're watching, it's just the odds are astronomical against getting that photo that you're after. But I still buy lottery tickets, so there's a chance, it's one of those deals, somebody's going to win that lottery. It might be me. So I keep trying.
Have you tried any of the trail cameras on time lapse instead of triggered?
We have. We put several. Plot watcher, I believe, is what we had up. They were plot watchers, is what they were called, and we had them taking a photo every second. Now, again, you're essentially watching this tiny little area. You're hoping, we even tried an array once where there was this big old tree, and we hung these plot watchers all the way around a tree, watching out in every direction, for however many feet they could watch. And they took a picture every minute. Now, the limitation was they only worked during daylight, so that was a limitation. And a lot of the activity that we experienced down in Area X is nighttime stuff. But you're taking a fairly high resolution picture every second of the day. That requires a lot of maintenance. You're having to swap out cards at most every couple days. You might could stretch it out with the biggest of cards, which are not cheap. Batteries get used up much faster. And just, the whole idea with the trail camera is that you go into the environment, you set it up, you try to minimize your scent, and you go in as quietly as you can. You're trying to sneak in there unnoticed as best you can, leave it, camo it, and get out and let the environment get back to normal as fast as possible, and let this camera just sit there and marinate and become part of the natural environment that these animals, they get used to seeing it. It's almost without exception, the first week or so that a camera's out, you'll get almost nothing, because animals are wary. That their masters, they're in tune with their environment, and they know when something's been changed, something's not right, and it takes a while for them to get used to it there. But then you'll start to get pictures of things. But about the time that starts to happen, well, that's when you got to go in and change the cards and the batteries, and you kind of restart the clock again. And so there's, all these things factor in, and it just makes it difficult. I think it can work. I think, ultimately somebody probably will. And there have been some pretty intriguing photos that have been captured on trail cameras. We've got some. I mean, but if something's right here to the camera, you see fur, you see hair. Well, that may very well be a Sasquatch, but how can you prove it? You can't tell what it is from the photo that's been taken, and things like that have happened, and there have been some others that been taken by other people that are really intriguing, but combination of it's just not the money shot, so to speak, along with the fact that now with and we're really starting to see it with AI. I just don't know if any photo will serve as proof to the powers that be. It was bad enough when all there was out there was Photoshop, and now you got this AI stuff going on, and it's a quandary. I just don't know if any photo taken within the last 5 years will ever be accepted universally as proof that that's a real photo with the technology that's out there. I don't know. We're seriously questioning how much money should we continue to invest in cameras, because is anybody going to believe it if we do get it? And so that's just one of the things we're dealing with in a changing landscape, as far as technology goes.
What do you think it will take to finally put it on the scientific map?
Well, unfortunately, what I think the only thing that will be 100% universally accepted is a specimen, a body. Now, for a while, in NAWAC, we were actively trying to acquire one, and we've kind of backed off that now, not because we've changed our mind on what we think it will take, but the complications of you think about hunting something that walks on two legs and the potential for disaster that goes along with that. Even for seasoned hunters, it's just it's well, I'll be honest with you. You know, I told you I served on the board of directors for a decade and a half and served as the chairman of the group. And one of the factors that weighed in my decision on stepping down from that role of responsibility was just this weight of when we were having a summer operation, and we had certain guys, and we had high qualifications and standards for guys that we would approve to be, you know, the hunters, you know. But it was terrifying to sit at home knowing there's a team out there and knowing that if something were to go wrong, not only would it just be a tragedy on a personal level in so many ways, but you think about the legal ramifications for that person, you know, who squeezes the trigger, and the organization brass that okayed it, and it was, you know, it's just that has weighed on me and worried me, and I fretted over that, and just, oh God, you know, just and so we have backed off that to a great degree. I still think that's ultimately what it will take. You know, what everybody hopes now is that we're walking out in the woods and we come across the body of one that was 95 years old, died of a heart attack in its sleep, and lived a full life, and, you know, has now basically made itself available to us, you know. But, you know, it could happen. A logging truck in East Texas going up Highway 96 could hit one, you know. There's a lot of ways something like that could happen. But I think ultimately the only thing that will remove all doubt is a specimen, a piece of one or an actual body. And a lot of people, oh no, you know, the DNA. And the way DNA works is, you know, they're going to take that sample and they're going to compare it to everything in the known database. And we don't have one of in the dirty little secret of how did all these animals get into the database is because a specimen was collected of all of them. That's how they got the DNA. And we don't have one for these animals. And so the best you could hope for is something would come back as unknown, which I believe has happened. That's the best, but that's not proof of what it is. You know, they basically have told you what it isn't, right? Another thing that tends to happen is it comes back very human-like, and so, but not quite human. So it must be contamination. This is a bad sample, which that has happened many, many times. And so I think a lot of people have a lot of hope for eDNA and things of that nature. I think perhaps if you were able to collect eDNA, let's say someone did get some photos or a video of one walking across a sandbar like Roger Patterson did back in the day. If you could document that trackway with measurements and the stride length and the size of the foot and the depth of the tracks, and you've got the video to corroborate it, and the video matches what is seen on the physical location, and you're able to collect eDNA from out of the footprint, maybe that would be compelling enough to get, you know, a university or National Geographic or Discovery Channel or somebody willing to fund, you know, put forth the manpower and the money needed to get to the bottom of all this. But it's a very high bar. You've heard extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and it's true, and it's frustrating, but by the same token, if we're ever able to hit that bar, there's absolutely no doubt, at that point. It's not a maybe at that point, and that's why that bar is set so high. And so I think that's what it's going to take. I don't want to necessarily be the one to do it, if that makes sense. But if just a blanket statement, what is it going to take? I think that's what it's going to take. Absolutely.
I would really like to see all these DNA studies and stuff where it comes back the unknown creature, the unknown DNA. If they could finish the whole DNA sequence of whatever that is, and then put it in the database as unknown number 1. And then when you get the next unknown DNA, sequence that and see if it matches unknown 1.
Well, absolutely. But here's your problem. Here's the problem, though. Who's going to pay for that? So we're right back. We've come full circle to one of the big two problems, that the field has, and the people collecting these unknown samples. They're just regular folks who, I don't have. Well, I'm not even going to pretend to know how much it would cost to have a scientist run DNA testing and try to, duplicate and build the whole genome and all that kind of stuff. I have no idea, but I'm willing to bet it runs into the thousands of dollars. And most people just don't have it, and so we can't. It brings us back to that issue. And that's where if the Smithsonian got involved, if National Geographic got involved, if, whoever, then kind of what you're talking about, I think could be done. And that's where I think maybe the most important person, the next big important person in Bigfoot research, is not going to be the guy with the Indiana Jones hat and the rifle and the plaster casting or the video camera. I think it's going to be somebody sitting at a desk who writes grants and who secures the funding for something along the lines of what you're talking about. And that's not glamorous. And that's what most people who get into this field don't want to sit in some office at some desk writing grants, but I would love it. I would love to get in touch with somebody who does that for a living, who has an interest in this topic, to reach out and talk to me. And let's see, let's identify some possible sources of funding. Let's write a grant. We'll throw in what we have, the evidence we do have, the tag 7 data, for example, and see if this entity, this person, this university, whoever it is, finds it compelling enough to, we'll throw a few bucks at you and let's see what happens. Let's propose doing that DNA study of unknown, comparing unknown samples and things like that. So I would love to talk to anybody who has experience in that field, but I think it may very well be that accountant-looking guy sitting at the desk writing grants that is the key to breaking this thing wide open. And so I think that's the next thing.
Are you familiar with the current DNA project that they're starting at? I think it's the North Carolina.
Yeah. Yes, I am. I mean, not in depth. And we have some samples that that the current board is probably going to discuss whether or not to send them. And here's another issue. Now, this, from everything I've heard about it, and and again, it's not my job. I'm on the board anymore to vet these things, but from everything I've heard and seen, this is a pretty credible effort that's going to go on. I know we have rocks that have blood samples on them that we believe came from one of these animals, and we had a limited number of them and that were collected. And we've sent them to a couple of different places to have them analyzed, and it turned out these were not the credible, well-run efforts that we thought they were going to be. And so you have these resources, and it's true they're not doing you any good sitting in a freezer or sitting in a box in a closet, but at the same time, you don't want to send them out willy-nilly here, there, wherever, to whoever claims to be running the study, because once they're gone, they're gone. And you think maybe this is important, and maybe this is something that somebody who's really doing it the right way, this will help the effort. But it's completely wasted when it's sent to the wrong person in the wrong lab. And we had an experience with and sometimes even the ones that sound like it's going to be great. You're probably familiar with Brian Sykes and the Yeti project he ran, where he was looking for people to send in evidence, hair or blood or whatever people had, and we had a hair sample that I'm as sure as I can be. You know, I'm 99% convinced this came from a wood ape or a Sasquatch, and we sent that in, and they ended up doing a whole program on it. Can't remember if it was Animal Planet or Discovery or where it aired, but our samples did not make the program, which that's okay. But we're like, well, what happened to them? And no one was ever able to. We know that they received them. You know, we had tracking numbers and such, and we know that the sample was received. But as far as we can tell, they were never tested. They were lost, misplaced. And so you're hesitant. You know, you're guarded in what you send and to whom. And so from what I've understand about this new effort, it sounds very promising, and you know, who knows, we may very well end up sending something to participate in it. But these are things you have to stop and consider. And again, it doesn't do you any good sitting in the closet, but you don't want to just throw it away either. And so the guys on the board, they're going to take a close look and make a decision based on that. But yeah, I've heard, and I have high hopes for it. I hope it works out, and I hope it is absolutely the real legitimate effort that it's being billed to be anyway. You know, so far so good with what I've heard.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, we are at the end of our time here today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your information. And I love keeping up with the Wood Ape Conservancy down there and all you guys are doing. I listen to the podcast and I try and follow up on all the stuff that you're doing. So I want to say thank you for everything that you guys are doing and the time and money that you guys have invested in it.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's a pleasure to be here. Be glad to visit with you anytime, and you know, fingers crossed that this thing gets done pretty quick.
Awesome, man. Real quick, remind everybody where we can find yourself and the Wood Ape Conservancy and all that stuff. Sure. And you also have a book out as well. We didn't even get into that. Go ahead and tell people about that. And
yeah, I'm not much of a salesman. I didn't steer you toward the book. Authored a book. It's been out a little while now. It's called Valley of the Apes: The Search for Sasquatch in Area X. And it's available, you know, wherever online books are, Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, you know, wherever. And it's basically, the book's, it's not really halves. It's more like a third and then 2/3. But the first part of the book is kind of the origin of the group and how it came together, and our early outings and the evidence we collected and what we learned that led us to Area X. And then the last 2/3 of the book are basically the story of each of the various summer operations through the years, what we encountered, what happened. It includes a lot more detail on Tag 7, various other incidents where we came very painfully close to getting what we were looking for. And there's a lot, if you're interested in the behavior of these animals, if you've ever had an experience and you wondered, I wonder if that was one of these apes. So, that was really weird. You never saw anything, but you heard something, or, there's a lot of behaviors documented in the book, things that we've encountered over, basically 2 decades of doing this. So I've had a lot of people contact me and said, I wasn't sure, but, exactly what happened, what you wrote about in chapter whatever, that happened to me. It was just like that. And so it is, in that regard, it's helped some people kind of come to terms with some weird experience that they had, and okay, I'm not crazy. It has happened to other people and things like that. But it's a look at how hard it is to do this work, what it takes to do this work, the methodologies we've used to try to do this work, and the experiences of our membership over these 2 decades of trying to get to the bottom of this. And it's there's some pretty crazy stuff in there, but it's, it all happened. And so that's what it's about. And if you would like anybody that wants a signed copy or a special inscription or anything like that, they can contact me at those email addresses. Again, Michael or Mike Mays 44 at Yahoo, or go to michaelcmays.com, the website, or the Texas Cryptid Hunter blog, and you can get a hold of me, and be glad to arrange something with you. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to write and relive all that stuff. There were some things I really hadn't thought about for years when I went back and dug all the old field notes out, and it was a lot of fun to do, and it's been well received.
Very good. Very good. Awesome, man. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and I encourage everyone to go check out your book and all the work that you guys are doing down there. It's absolutely amazing. So
I appreciate what you're doing to bring attention, shine a light on all this. We need, there's a lot of programs out there, but they're not all great, like we said. So, people that are taking a sober, earnest look into things, there's a fine line between having an open mind and just believing anything, and that sometimes is a difficult line to walk. And so programs like this one, where you're really taking it seriously and taking a good hard look at it, they are appreciated by those of us that are out there trying to get it done.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, and I will see you later, man. Hopefully I get to meet you in person and come out and check out some of your stuff. Are you going to be at any conventions or anything coming up? Or
No. Well, I take that back. I'm going to be speaking in Arkansas come the spring, but that's the next speaking engagement I have lined up. So yeah, I'm available. Holler at me.
There you go. All right, man. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that is our show for today. This is pre-recorded, so let me just check who's going to be on next week for you. It is going to be Mark Marcel will be on next week after this one airs. So that's a couple weeks out for me here doing this recording, but for you guys, it'll be next week. So until then, guys, thanks for watching Monsters on the Edge, and I'll see you on the edge.